Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the Breakdown Live. It is Sunday evening. There's no game to break down due to the Storm Darren. And so, yeah, we had to come up with something different. And we thought with the news that has come out this week and the general stop-start season, to put it kindly, I thought who better to chat to and answer some questions from the people than Mr. Paul Abandonato. Covered the club and many other sports for a long time. We won't put a number on it, but we'll say a long time. Welcome back to the channel, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. Yourselves?
Yeah,
Hope everyone's safe after the storm.
Always good. Yeah, it was very, very windy, wasn't it? It was. My fence has come down. I'm gonna have to sort that out this week at some point.
Ditto. Minor damage, but I've got a bit of minor damage to the fence as well. I'm sure a lot of people have.
Yeah, it's just this. Unfortunately, like I saw a lot of people complaining that the game was off, but like I do kind of get it. It's the FA and the club and all the people who were involved in that decision. They don't call off games sort of willy-nilly. And I guess if they'd gone ahead with it and some sort of debris or whatever like blows and hits someone, you know, it's going to be a serious matter in it. So I understand it, as much frustrating as it is, and as it definitely takes something away from the weekend not having a game on. But Wednesday, mate, we have a game. It'll be interesting now. Do you think we'll see any difference? It's the first question I want to ask you, because I've been kind of speculating this a bit over the last week, is now that he's got the security of being there till the summer, do you think we see any changes to his squad selection, his tactics, things like that? Like, I'm thinking more along the lines of maybe some of the younger players, because if you're, and I think Bullet fell into this a little bit at the end of last year, when you're sort of playing week to week for your job, it's a little bit more difficult to gamble maybe on some of the younger players, because you've got to try and win every game and you're playing for your job. Do you think we might see a bit of a change in that, or do you expect it to stay pretty much the same?
Well, the first thing to say is don't just presume he's there till the summer, Si.
Well, yeah,
let's see how that pans out. Let's hope he is, obviously, but let's see how that pans out. I hope so, to answer your question, because I felt the last home game, which was QPR, I thought he managed very poorly. I thought he picked the wrong team to start. I thought he didn't make the changes that were needed at half time. And this is relevant to your question. I thought it was crying out for a couple of substitutions at half time. And then when he did make the subs late, it was too late. And I remember he brought Maiten Willock on rather than Reindorf. It was crying out for that. And I was just thinking, I'm not blaming Riza for this, although I was on the night, because this is just the situation he's been put in, ridiculous situation he's been put in by the owner. And I was thinking, if he had more authority, he might have made the big calls that were needed that night. I thought, for example, Joe Ralls and Callum Robinson had to come off at half time in that game and be replaced. But he wasn't. So now he does have the security until the end of the season, Si. Maybe he feels he is a little bit more empowered to make the big calls that are required. To be fair to him, he has made some big calls. You know, he's making more use of Ruben Colwell than any other manager has done. He did make the changes that were, you know, after what I thought was an abject performance against QPR, and his reaction to that worried me, because he was basically saying that he thought Cardiff played well, had 24, 25 shots. Well, I'm afraid that's just not the way I saw that game. But he did make significant changes for the Coventry match, and the performance was a lot better. And that was one of the reasons why, I think. So he will. I do hope he is a little more empowered. I still think there are youngsters that need to be given a little bit more of an opportunity than perhaps they have been. But it's not easy when you're stuck in a relegation battle, Simon. The natural default setting will be to go with experience, championship experience in particular, where in a position like that. So it's almost like a chicken and the egg situation for Cardiff.
Yeah, I think this is one of my issues. I don't really have an issue with them giving it to Riza till the end of the year or till the summer. My kind of issue with it is that, yes, give it to him, but give him some support, because it feels like he's running it on a very threadbare coaching staff. There's no one there with substantial experience really in managing or, even coaching to a certain degree. And also, I feel like he's learning on the job. That's really clear to see. You look at the Bristol game where he went too early, going, 3 or 5 in the back. That cost us. I thought the Blackburn game was another example. When Turnbull scores and it's 2-1, I think it was 2-1. I thought as soon as Turnbull scored, that was the moment to get Reindorf in to do exactly what exactly what he did when he came off the bench the other week or the other game. Just cause a bit of mayhem, press, enthusiastic, a bit raw, not expecting miracles from him individually, but his enthusiasm and his energy would have been ideal, because Blackburn were so devoid of confidence, and we kind of scored, and we just, So I feel it's not the QPR game as well. Callum Robinson missed, I think he should have had a hat-trick in the second half. He missed some real clear chances. I think Ruben missed a couple. But I also agree with you that I think he has shown that he can make those big calls, because I would argue that, the Coventry game, Ruben probably did need to go onto the bench, just because subconsciously, if you're in the team every week, I think you can, maybe get a bit comfortable. So I think that gave him a bit of a nudge, because when he came on against Coventry, I thought Ruben was, he clearly was, up for it, and he was everywhere, and he played more like a box-to-box midfielder in that game, which I thought was interesting. But there's lots to discuss, and obviously we're going to go to some of the questions as well. Are we in a relegation battle, mate, legitimately, or should I say, and should we be with the squad that we have? Should we be where we are? The table doesn't lie, but is it almost the mismanagement throughout the season by the club that has caused us to be where we are?
Yes, 100%. That is I think we all know the gaping gaps in this. Every squad in the division, every team in the division will have areas of weakness or less strength, whichever way you want to word it. We know what Cardiff's are. We've been through it time and again, particularly with a couple of the forward positions. But they've had a couple of decent summer windows, Simon, in terms of pushing the boat out a little bit more. That squad is we're told that it's a top 7 wage squad. And, the goalies are okay. I don't rate Alnwick as highly as many Cardiff fans do, but both goalkeepers are okay. You could argue that you need a stronger, more dominant goalkeeper. But Gutas is a very good centre-half at Championship level. Darlin clearly is a player there in the making. Chambers has been playing very well, other than the Luton game of late. O'Dowda's a decent player. Siopis, Ramsey, Robertson, Turnbull, these are very, very decent midfielders at Championship level. And then you've got people like Bagan, you've got those youngsters, Capaccio and Giles in particular, who I think offer great promise. The point I'm trying to make is that it's a much more, I think Al Ghazi, it's not happened for him yet, but I think there's genuine talent there that might just come out in time. I think the point I'm making is that, to me, it's and this is one of the bonuses at the moment, right? Amidst all the chaos and turmoil of the lack of communication, the manager situation, and other things that fans are understandably have angst over. I actually think the squad is far more fit for purpose moving forward than in recent years, where it was full of 30-something players with no sell-on value. This is a squad now with younger players in it who will get better, who can be the future for Cardiff City, and also who are capable of netting big money for Cardiff City and transfer fees down the year. So it's a far more fit for purpose squad in that respect. It's a much more sensible business model. But obviously, you need the right manager to knit that together, and you need. And this goes hand in hand. It's all interlinked. You need the right signings this January to mitigate against those weaknesses that we know are clearly evident in that squad. So it's a squad that is much better than the current position in the table would suggest, Simon. But a whole raft of reasons, the table doesn't lie, as the age-old saying goes in football. There are a whole raft of reasons why Cardiff are where they are in the table. And that then becomes a battle. So, yeah, of course they're in a relegation fight at the moment because that's where they are in the table. Now, a win over Watford and another win over Preston, which is obviously easier said than done, this is what would suddenly lift Cardiff high and down. This was what was so frustrating about the QPR game for me, Simon, about the team selection and the way it was managed during the game, that winning that game would have taken Cardiff to 15th or 16th in the table, literally one or two of those positions. I can't remember which one. That's the difference. And, and suddenly you then look ahead to come and think, well, do you know what? Get another point or get another 3 points there, and you're edging close towards the top 10. The whole mindset changes. But losing to the bottom club was the most demoralising performance of the season for me. It sort of usurped anything that's happened thus far. And when you lose games like that, it means, you're going to be in a relegation fight until you actually force your way out of it, which this squad is more than capable of doing. And a couple of wins, and as I say, suddenly it's mid-table and it's a completely different mindset. So, but it's all very well talking about it. They've got to nail those wins, haven't they? And the concerns that I and obviously fans everywhere have are those forward positions in terms of, where are the goals going to come from? And do you know what's really dawned on me? When Cardiff they went through a decent run start with under Omar, then it was a poor run again, and then Coventry was decent again when Ruben Colwell came on and played really well, as you say. The common denominator in that decent one was Ruben playing well. The common denominator in the poor run was Ruben not playing well. And it's not fair that he has to play well for Cardiff City to play well. They have to have other players at centre forward and in a wide position who can actually play well themselves and take the heat off him, if you like. And then so this is why, in this transfer window, I really hope that Omar does have the authority and the knowledge and the contacts to be able and persuade Vincent Tan to go out and get a really capable centre forward and a really capable winger with real pace, which is severely lacking in the team at the moment, I feel. I like Tanner on one side, but you can't expect Ollie Tanner to be starting every game. It's not right. He's not ready for that quite yet. So they need those two positions as a matter of absolute urgency. And the other potential position they need to strengthen is right back, which may sound heresy given Perry NG has been player of the year 2 seasons running, but I personally think he's been at fault with a number of goals this season. I've never actually thought Perry NG is quite put him on the plateau that you and others have put him on in the past, Si. But that doesn't mean he's not a very, very capable right back at championship level. But he needs competition for his place because, it wouldn't have been unfeasible if there were another decent right back on the book for him to have been taken out of the firing line, given some of the errors that have occurred this season that have directly led to goals. So he needs to recover the kind of form that led to yourself and others saying that he was among the very finest right backs in the championship last season. So those to me are so you ask about the squad, those to me are the key areas that need to be improved. We're talking about 3 positions. And then there's a lot of quality and a lot of depth in the other positions. We can talk about things like lack of leaders, whereas in the past they had Bamba, Morrison, and Gunnarsson, and Peltier, and players like that in the team. But I don't see why people like Gutas and Chambers can't be leaders. I don't get that at all.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot to unpack there. I don't disagree with a lot of it. So what I want to first ask you about is, obviously, you're pretty positive about the quality of the squad. Obviously, not the performances, but the quality of the squad is there, in your opinion. And I tend to agree. And I think on paper, at the end of the summer, I was very vocal about. I was so positive at the start of the season because I thought I looked at the transfer business we'd done. I was very familiar with Alex Robertson, so I was I was kind of confident that he was going to have an impact. If Kanga comes in and scores goals, then I think the transfer business is really good in the summer. But because he hasn't, and he's got to the point now where he's not even in the squad, it's obviously an issue. We're heavily relying on Callum Robinson, who's probably the best finisher at the club, but equally is not prolific in terms of his goals to chances kind of percentage and stuff like that. But what I wanted to ask you was, if we're so positive about the quality of the squad being there, bar one or two, why is everyone so angry at the moment?
Well, everyone's angry because, well, you know that as well as I do. Everyone's angry because there's been an ongoing feeling of apathy from above for a number of years now, which has allowed the club to drift. That was kind of overtaken a little bit, or the trend was bucked with what I thought was a very positive summer transfer window last year, and the appointment of somebody that I thought, yeah, this is different as a manager in Errol Bullitt. This week, finally, Cardiff can have a manager that takes them places. It then went wrong, but again, there was a reasonable summer window of transfer activity and a pledge that Bullitt would be more positive. He not so much doubled down, but more quadrupled down on his negative tactics and team selections. So that started the real wave of negativity this season. The fact that an interim manager has been appointed is not an issue in its own right, but it is when it comes back on a whole plethora of interim managers having been appointed under Vincent Tanzwatch previously, and the negative way that has always ended in the past. Obviously, the lack of communication from the club hasn't helped. And the feeling is, and this was underlined in the letter from supporters leaders to the club last week, or a week ago today, I think it was, is that the age-old issues that we've argued, that we've spoken about many times, Simon, that the structure is wrong. That there is no director of football, there's no full-time chief executive. But I don't want to. These are boring arguments to me now because I've discussed them for years and years, and yet they're still relevant today because the issues have not been addressed, if you like. So all of this creates a cloud, if you like, which creates the anger, the discontentment, the disillusionment rather, not delusionment. Delusionment could come from elsewhere, you could argue. The disillusionment that people have, and it just is a vicious circle that goes round and round and round, and is probably close to coming to a head now.
Yeah, and I think look, I don't want to go down the same conversation with regards to the footballing structure. I feel like I've repeated every week, but we all know and we can all see that that's an issue day to day and in the footballing decisions that are made by the football club. But I cannot fathom, after receiving that letter from the appointed, fan leaders and groups, that there was no communication back, no statement back. They appointed the manager who, by the way, signed his contract with no directors, no board members in the photo, nothing, which kind of just to me summed up the whole thing, if I'm honest. And then the statement which came out a couple of days ago from the club was very much, didn't address anything, felt like a bit of a dig at the fans, almost kind of saying, just, shut up, pay your money and leave the running of the football club to us, sort of thing. And it's just that apathy, mate. I cannot fathom it. Like, I can't understand why the hierarchy at Cardiff City haven't read that letter and gone, right, we need to address this immediately. We need to address this straight away. So you put out a statement saying we've taken in the letter, blah, blah, blah. We're going to get in contact with the relevant people to organize a meeting, blah, 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 and we'll address everything in that meeting. Like, that's the bare minimum to me. And I just cannot understand. There's two sides of it to me. So you've got the complete apathy where they don't seem to care from, the owner all the way through. They just don't seem to be that bothered. But then on the other side, they're letting the fans get more and more angry and disillusioned and frustrated. So you have on one side, you have the stadium getting emptier and emptier at home games. But equally, you now have fan groups starting to prepare things like protests and these sorts of things to try and get their message to the club that to listen to the fans, who at the end of the day, without the fans, there's no club. And I can't understand why we all see it coming, and we have done for a while, why they can't see it coming, or if they do, why they've made no effort to address those concerns. Any ideas, mate, like on any of that? Because I don't understand 100%. It, mate. I really don't.
Yeah, 100%. I know, because I actually spoke to. Listen, those supporters leaders are very credible individuals. One or two of them aren't the type to cause rifts, if you like.
No,
so to put their names to this letter really shows how bad it is. While I agree pretty much, I certainly agree with all the sentiments in the supporters letter. I thought they used the word toxicity. I thought that's a little bit over the top. That's a little bit unnecessary.
But just on that, Paul, just very quickly, it is like you only have to go on social media anytime around a game, and that frustration and apathy which is built up over the last few years is at a toxic level now. It's very difficult to have.
Yeah, I just think with supporters leaders, it potentially leads to a pile on. But let's not take away from the fact that I obviously agree with the vast, certainly with the sentiments of the letter and the reasons for sending it. I totally get all that. But I spoke to people involved and I said, I know exactly what's going to happen here. And what's that then? I said, Vincent Tan will dig his heels in. Ken Chu will get really angry. And at some point, Mehmet Dalman will have to act as the pacifier and create peace here. And yeah, you pretty much summed it up perfectly as the way I was being told from inside and outside the club. But the club's argument is that they have a series of monthly meetings with these fans leaders to. I'm not defending the club here. I'm just trying to put you in. You ask me any idea why I'm trying to give an idea why by going into their heads, if you like, for a while. They would argue that they have had a series of meetings and they have a series of other meetings scheduled with these fans leaders, and that is their idea of communication. Obviously, the depth to what's being communicated at those meetings is another matter entirely. Where I think they've gone really badly wrong is in themselves responding to the letter with that statement on their own website, where they then, in my view, they then go over the top with the use the word incendiary. They said that what the letter supporters sent was incendiary. That's as bad, if not worse, than the original word of toxicity, which I was a little bit perturbed with. But the fact they've sent that letter perfectly demonstrates that I was right in my assessment of exactly how they would react to it. And it magnifies even more the fact that the chairman, who is a bit of a voice of reason and seen as a bit more of a pacifier, if you like, will end up having to pick up the pieces here at some point and try to bring the two parties back together again. This is not a good position for the club to be in. You cannot alienate. It's not like Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Barclays Bank. A football club is nothing without its supporters. They are far more than, yes, they are paying customers, of course, right? But they're far more than that. There's a passion, there's an investment, there's a loyalty, and they are the future of the club as well. So it's not a good position to be in where you put a statement out responding to a letter where you're basically having a go at those supporters leaders for doing what they did in the first place. And these supporters leaders are sensible individuals, Simon. We're not talking about oiks who go up and down and move with the flow depending on whether the team has won or lost. These are very rational, measured, intelligent individuals. I know most of them. And they're not the sort, they just want the best for Cardiff City. So it's not a good position for the club to be in where A, they get a letter in the first place, B, they react to the letter in the way they have, and C, now there's a standoff. It's not a good position to be in. So again, to go back to your original question to me, that is another reason why people are angry at the moment. And in terms of the question was all based around, well, if it's such a good squad, why is that the case? I think people can see it's a really underperforming squad for a whole number of reasons. It's an underperforming club at the moment for the very reasons that we've outlined here tonight, but which we've spoken about many times in the past as well, Simon.
Yeah.
There are new elements to it. The letters are the new elements to it. Riza getting the job after a delay is another element to it, which has obviously annoyed a lot of people because they want a proven manager, if you like. But the principle of the whole thing is this circle that keeps going round at the moment and has been for a little while now, which creates this discontent that you're asking about, I suppose.
But doesn't it also show how out of touch the football club is with the fans and their concerns? Because it's almost like the football club is seeing it as, the fans are a bit annoyed because we're not doing very well on the pitch. But it's so much deeper than what's going on. It's so much deeper than being in a relegation battle or the form on the pitch being not very good. It's not really about that to a certain degree. And I think it baffles me that they can't seem to understand that and that they don't want to address those issues. And that's concerning. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned by that, because I look at it and I just think it is going to come to a head because people are angry and they feel like they're being ignored. And that's when things do get a bit toxic. And you'd like to think they learned the lessons from, going back to the rebrand very briefly, like learn your lessons from that, whereby if you lose the fans, it all becomes very, very toxic and all becomes very negative very quickly. But I don't want to sort of happen. I do want to get to the questions from the people. Just before we go into the live chat, mate, I wanted to give you an opportunity to explain in a bit more detail rather than tweets your feelings on Joe Ralls as a Cardiff City player, because I see you sort of going back and forth with people at various times, and I see you take a lot of criticism for your opinions on Joe and Joe as a player now in 2024. And obviously, if you explain it in person. Yeah, it's a bit easier than a tweet that's limited to X amount of characters, because people take it very personally, like it's this personal attack by you towards him. And I don't think it's that. Knowing you and speaking to you regularly, I don't think it's anything like that. I don't think it's anything remotely personal. But I wanted to give you the kind of opportunity to just quickly explain, I guess.
Well, look, if people see it that way, it just about sums up the idiocy of it, basically, doesn't it, Simon? Right? But they do, because that's the passions that football creates, We're all entitled to our views on how, I don't criticize other people's views. I don't criticize them for raving about Joe Ralls. So why should they criticize? I just feel that modern midfielders need 360-degree vision, which means that they can receive the ball and immediately have a perpendicular view where they can actually sort of shift that ball on quickly in all areas of the pitch. It's not against Joe Ralls. I just think that Cardiff have a more progressive midfield when Robertson, Colwell, and I think Siopis should be there at the base of that. They've not started. I don't think they've started that midfield all seasons, Simon, which I think is ridiculous, because to me it's so easily the best midfield in terms of a blend and balance that Cardiff could have. But Turnbull came in at the base, obviously, and actually, immediately, instead of going backwards, he's sort of turning on the ball, looking to be progressive, looking to go forward, looking to create, looking to have vision, looking to have pops at goal. And I just think Cardiff need that from their midfield, and they probably need it even more so because of the lack of ability or the poor transfer window that they had in terms of the forward positions this summer. I think they had a decent window other than that. So it's nothing against Joe. Joe's a magnificent servant for Cardiff City Football Club. He's been a decent player in the past, but we are where we are in 2024 as far as I'm concerned. It's just a personal opinion. Indeed. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does. And look, that's nothing which I haven't said either. Like I've said, I think Joe Ralls can contribute a lot as a squad player this year. I just don't think 9 times out of 10 he's a starter for me. He might start the odd game where you need to hold possession, or you think you're going to have a lot of possession against a low block and you need someone who can sort of find that pass. But generally speaking, I think he'll be for certain situations off the bench. What I did find interesting, and I don't know whether you would agree, I think you went to the game, so you'll be maybe had a different view to me. But when Ruben came on in the Coventry game, obviously Turnbull went off injured, which is a bit of a blow. But I felt as if, particularly in the second half, Ruben played more like a number 8 than a number 10. And I thought he looked like he was able to get on the ball a bit more, because I know we've had a discussion on the various shows recently that maybe teams have sussed him out a little bit in recent weeks, whereby they know if they don't give him pockets of space and they put a midfielder on him, he's not able to influence the game, which Cardiff then don't create as many chances. But the way we were sat against Coventry, we had him and Robertson, and it was almost like an old school 4-3-3, where you had, I think it was Siopis, but I might be wrong. My memory's bad. Where you had Siopis in the second half sat in front of the defence, and then you had Robertson and Ruben either side. And I thought it worked very well. And Ruben was up and down. He helped out the left back a few times defensively as well, which I found really interesting. And the reason I found it interesting is because a couple of people who I've spoken to within like the Wales setup and stuff like that, I think they, I'm not sure for definite, but I think there's certain people within the Wales camp that long term see him as more of a kind of number 8, if you like, rather than a number 10. He's certainly got the physique for it. Do you think that's a role that we might see him progress into as his career goes on? And do you think it's a role he can do now?
Well, I'm not as sure as you're about. I mean, certainly Craig Bellamy. You're talking about Wales. I know that Bellamy thinks that way. He sees him as an 8. He doesn't necessarily see him as a 10. He sees him as more of an 8 type figure. He obviously only played 50 odd minutes of energy out of you if you're bombing up and down the pitch. I mean, there are questions about Ruben's sort of fitness, so we'll see on that one. But when he did come on, I'm happy to be corrected on this, but I think I'm right in saying this. Finally, because I don't think that midfield of Siopis, Robertson, Colwell, which gave me so much hope for the start of the season, I don't think that they have started a game together. Those three, I don't think that midfield started. So I was actually looking forward to Watford, thinking, look, they played so well as a midfield three against Coventry that finally we'll get the three of them to start against Watford. It's one of the reasons I was disappointed the game was called off, because I thought we would finally get a chance to see those three together from the start. I just think it's so blatantly obvious to me that is the best midfield combination for Cardiff in terms of the blend and everything. And I think it would bring the best out of all three individuals as well, Simon, because they're differing strengths. But neither Errol Bullitt nor Omar Riza has agreed with that up to this point. Although Omar did go down that route as we were talking about towards the end of the first half and the second half of Coventry when Turnbull got injured. Turnbull's done well when he came on, Turnbull's done okay. He actually helped reinvigorate the side, I thought, with his progressive nature of his passing from the base. So I think Craig Bellamy wants more from Ruben before he'll pick him for Wales. We look at, with the greatest respect to Ollie Cooper and Liam Cullen, who both filled the number 10 role for Wales in recent times. They don't have Ruben's ability. It's chalk and cheese there. But I think that the energy they show, the energy levels they show, perhaps suits the way Craig wants to play with Wales more than Ruben does at the moment. This is the way Craig sees it, whether we agree with that or not. So he sees Ruben as a super talented player who can play either 10 or he can play that deeper role, Simon. I'm not convinced by the deeper role at the moment, but I do think that his best performances for Cardiff, and I'm thinking, say, things like the last 30 minutes against the Southampton team that went up last season, it was an all-action performance where he was up and down the pitch, if you like, but still doing the creative bit in the final third.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It'd be interesting because I do think sometimes teams generally, not just Cardiff, are so ingrained in their 4-2-3-1 system that they almost forget that there is other ways to implement a similar system. Like you could change the shape slightly and it might create opportunities to get certain players on the ball. And one thing I'll say about Omar Riza is I think in game, he has shown himself to be quite tactically flexible. He's gone to 3 at the back, 5 at the back. He's gone 4-4-2. He's gone more of a sort of traditional 4-3-3. That's encouraging to me because that shows that he's adaptable in the game depending on the situation. And he's noticing things where things might not be going right or he might be able to get at other teams. My only concern, as I mentioned at the start of the show, is I really feel that when we appointed him to the summer, it was necessary that we bring in a coach or coaches with either who are experienced to help him or are exceptionally tactically astute so that he's got support in those areas where he is learning. Unfortunately, the noises that I'm hearing is that he will not get any additional coaches. And we're really threadbare on coaching staff, mate, at the moment. Have you heard any plans regarding any coaching appointments?
No, what I would say is that when I did hear the original plan, we're talking about weeks ago now. Yes. The original plan, I was told, was Vincent Tan had decided Omar was going to get the job to the end of the season. They had Slaven Bilic as a potential backup in January if it went wrong, but with Omar would come 1 or 2 coaches. There was even some talk about some sort of potential, not director of football, but somebody to fill that kind of role.
Yeah, love him.
But anyway, whatever. So I tweeted that out and waited for the announcement, and
Never came.
it never came. I was genuinely shocked because this was from an absolutely impeccable
Yeah.
couple of sources that this came from. So
And what I can say as well is that the day you tweeted that out, I had heard exactly the same thing from
right, so
what I would regard as one of the best sources possible in terms of if they tell me stuff, then I expect it to happen. So
this was, if I remember, I can't remember the exact timeline, so forgive me if I've got it slightly wrong, but I'm pretty certain this was a couple of days before the Norwich game, or maybe something like that. That's how far back we're going. And of course, they came back wonderfully well in that game to win that 2-1, a game they could easily have lost, but it showed those players were committed to the cause under Riza, which was great.
Yeah.
Brilliant fight back. So that, well, the announcement then will come on Sunday, which Cardiff sometimes do with managers. No announcement Monday, no announcement Tuesday, no alert to an announcement. So what's going on? And then it just dragged on and on and on and on. And in effect, we had the announcement, last Wednesday, which was a number of weeks later, but minus this coaching element that you're talking about, which is clearly an area of concern because Omar needs that help.
Of course he does.
So no, to answer you, no, so originally I heard that's what was happening. I've heard nothing subsequently about who those coaches will be, or indeed if they will come on board at all, which is obviously a worry.
Yeah, so I had heard 2 days, like the day after he got appointed, I had heard that there was not just that, there was no names or anything floating about, that actually the plan was that there was no other coaches coming in now, which was contrary to what was kind of being said previous, but it is what it is. But I just think for Omar Riza, I feel quite sorry for him because I feel like he's almost been set up to fail and set up to take the blame when he's not to blame. And like Rob, I'm going to go to the comments now, mate, just as we go into the last bit.
Just before you do, very quickly on Omar, I don't want obviously the people commenting are far more important than what I've got to say, but just very quickly on Omar, the thing that concerns me is, first of all, I think he's a cut above Morrison and Hudson. So although there's an analogy to be made there, I think he's a level of, certainly Hudson, he's a level or two above both of those. So that gives me hope. What doesn't give that it won't necessarily end in an awful way this season. What does perturb me is that I was speaking to sensible individuals about, look, I've got a bad feeling about this, that before the end of the season, Cardiff probably be after another manager to rescue them from a relegation problem, blah, blah, blah. Tell me I'm wrong. Just put me in the right direction. And no one could do that for me. And that's what concerns me more than anything, Simon.
Yeah.
To counter that, but before this appointment, I used to write Nathan Blake's column and David Giles's column for the Echo. They're two individuals I've always respected the views of. They'll say things as they are. They won't just kowtow to the club, say other ambassadors might do at other clubs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was going to name one there down the road, but I won't. But both of them have said to me privately that they are absolutely, convinced Omar would be the right appointment for the club. He's got to be given a chance to sort of impart his philosophy on the team and this, that, and the other. And so when individuals like that say things like that to me, it gives me hope. So I don't know where to stand on it now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think ultimately the proof will be in the pudding, won't it? I think I did a video the other day, it was not 5 it was just like, could he be the long-term solution for Cardiff? And I kind of looked at some reasons why, and I tried to look at, some positives. But it was more of a conversation piece rather than my opinion saying, yes, he is the guy, because I'm not 100% sure. I feel like he's got potential to be the guy that could go into it long-term if he had the support around him off the field. However, that doesn't look like it's coming, which I think is a problem. Robert says, I think this is the year that the trapdoor will catch us. Sorry. Do you agree with that? Do you think this could be the year where we finally end up going down after flirting with it a few times over the last several years?
No, because there are definitely worse sides than Cardiff in this division. Whether they're worse running is another matter entirely. I just think that, you know, it's a cliche to say you're too good to go down, so I wouldn't insult anybody by saying that. But if it gets really pressing, they will just get an emergency manager in to, or my guess is, I can't speak for certain for the club, of course I can't. My guess is that they would get an emergency manager in who would get the best out of the players, and he would sort of ensure that the trapdoor is avoided. So Vincent Tan cannot afford for this club to go into League One. Vincent Tan eventually wants to sell the club, whenever that is.
Yeah.
You know, he can't see the stock fall dramatically as a League One football club. He just can't afford for that to happen.
Yeah, it would be disastrous. But I also think that I would like to think these players now, they do seem to want Riza. So they've said all the positive things and they've stuck up for him and said, give him a job. Well, he's got the job now. So the players as a collective have to put their performances where their words were, if you like, and they have to show
up. What I'm told there, Simon, from within the dressing room is that Errol Bullitt was all stick, whereas Omar is far more of the carrots. Yeah?
Yeah.
I was told upon the announcement coming out that the players have been spoken to by senior figures at Cardiff and all speak very highly of Omar. Yeah, which I know a lot of fans see that as a massive plus. I see them making these tweets on social media. Yeah, just to turn that on its head, you could argue that's the reason not to give the job to Omar, because you need fear inside that dressing room. You don't want, there's a big difference between the boss and your friend.
Well, that's the assistant manager's role, is normally to bridge the two, isn't it, between the coaches and the manager and the players. So the assistant manager is normally the kind of friendly one, and then the manager is much more clinical and maybe a bit more, like you say, a bit of fear there. Not to say that it can't work that way, but it'll be interesting how it develops through the season. Although I have heard that not everyone is happy with him, you know, and I'm sure there's not, because not everyone is getting in the match day squad every week, because we've got such a bloated squad. So, you know, that's just the nature of the beast in terms of players. The ones who are playing are going to be happy. The ones who are not are not. That's just the way it is, you know. Let's have a look. I saw someone, I think it was Jonathan, said, do you think he gets any finance in January? So I, just before you answer that, I have heard that he won't, or I'd heard when that initial thing was going around that he was going to get the job, etc., was that if Omar Riza had the job in January, he wasn't going to have any money to spend, but he would probably get like loans, and maybe if he sells, then they might have that funding, but it was unlikely that he'd get a bit of a kitty, if you like. Do you think he gets money?
I genuinely don't know. So I don't want to give that information that is false. My guess is no. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because this is where your recruitment team and your manager need to really earn their corn now, because there must be some damn good loans out there, young Premier League players or whatever, that Cardiff can get.
I'll throw one at you straight away, mate. Is a loan. I actually said it in the summer, but Al Hamidi at Ipswich Town barely gets a look in. Excellent striker, great record at championship level, scored goals everywhere he's gone. Very mobile, can get in behind. He's a bit like Robinson in terms of he can play up front, he can play wide, he can play in the 10. To me, he would be an intelligent signing. He wants to play. He's not playing at the moment. he's very capable of playing the way that we like to play. Like, I do believe that we look much better with someone like a Callum Robinson who's mobile up front than we do when we've had, you know, a Mate or a Kanga or more of a target man. So, you know, without much thought, there's one that I think would be a good loan sign until the end of the season, who would be the best striker that we've had, you know, that we've got at the club. So there are players there, mate. There's, you know, I know there's a few fullbacks knocking around as well, but it's whether you say the recruitment team, mate, but who is the recruitment team at Cardiff?
Well, it's not fair to name them individually. No,
I just mean in terms of, I guess I'm pointing towards the lack of footballing structure at the football club means that it becomes difficult.
I mean, they recruit now based on a load of data, don't they, on individuals? But I look at, you have to have trust in these, particularly the manager. You've got to have trust in it, and the scouting network around him. But whoever deemed, you can't say that Kanga has been a roaring success. And Willock, and this would be the concern with the player you just mentioned to me from Ipswich, Willock is that sort of player as well. The last thing Cardiff need is another winger, 10,
he's more of a striker, and he's got
okay. Well, that's they need an out-and-out centre forward, and they need a winger with real pace. It shouldn't be that difficult to get some quality individuals from the Premier League like that, Simon, on loan. So maybe they don't necessarily need to spend money in terms of an inflated transfer or whatever. I go back to in the not so distant past, Swansea got Tammy Abraham and Rhian Brewster. Both have scored goals. Cardiff need to come up with those sorts of individuals if they're going to get a loan. We know it's only for 5-6 months or so. Those are the kind of individuals they need who are going to earn their corn with 10 to 12 goals in this period, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Philip says nothing will change whilst Vincent Han is the owner. Rhys is on a hide into nothing. Do you agree with that or not?
It's hard to disagree, isn't it? I've said twice on the show already about the circle that Cardiff are in at the moment. And I mentioned one of the reasons for the angst is not the fact that they've appointed an interim. It is the fact that they've been down this route with interims on a number of occasions in the past, and it hasn't worked. So they need to strike lucky or be inspired with a brilliant managerial appointment for Philip's reading of the situation to be proven wrong. As things stand, it's hard to argue against Philip's reading of the situation, unfortunately. But let's hope that Omar just proves us all wrong and he actually does develop into this brilliant manager that few of us envisage at the moment. And he was, he shouldn't have. His press conference on Thursday, he's been announced an hour or so earlier, and he was sort of there to look ahead to the Watford game, which was obviously on at the time. And he started it with apologising to the fans. He shouldn't have to apologise for the fans. It's not fair to put him in that position, Simon. But good on him. Good on him, I say. We obviously have to wish him the very best.
Yeah. Oh, look, I have heard nothing but good things about him since he came in the summer. However, my concern is not with my concern isn't with him. Like I said earlier, I think he can do a really good job, and I think if the club put the right things in place around him, that I think he could be the man long term, maybe. But I think he certainly could do a good job this season. But then also, are you going to give any manager who's only here till the summer contractually, are you going to give him a bucket load of money? Are you going to allow him to get rid of players that maybe another manager would like to keep? In terms of selling to buy, for instance, there's only a certain amount of players who probably bring in money for Cardiff. You know, Ruben, Robertson, Siopis probably bring in a bit from abroad.
Oh, that's not true, Si. There's players there. There's more than that could bring in money. I mean, Ruben and Robertson are bringing significant money, but Perry NG would bring in money. Darlan would bring in a decent sum of money. There are others there as well. Tanner would bring money, you know.
But then, so just using Perry as an example, Perry NG's form for the last 12 months or so has been not good. He's been at fault for a few goals this year, even most recently.
I was having this very conversation with somebody on Friday evening, sort of expressing my concerns, and the counter that he gave me was Perry NG has been Cardiff's Player of the Year 2 seasons running, and at that point, what can I say? You know,
but there's been something not right. I think he's been generally better this year. Since Rhys took over, I think you've seen an improvement in him, but he still has a tendency to switch off. But then I do wonder, he plays every minute of every game unless he's suspended. And I do wonder whether maybe he needs a bit of competition, and he needs a bit of, if he feels like, you know, he's not guaranteed to play every minute of every game, maybe, you know, it's the same for anyone, isn't it? If you feel like you've got something to prove, you find that extra level.
Yeah. If you go back to Philip's point, and I, you know, I would love to be able to argue against it at the moment, but I just feel, as I said, we're in that circle at the moment. What I would say is that, you know, I've covered Cardiff for 30 years now, and nobody. I know we're in a different financial situation world today, but nobody is putting remotely the amount of money. No other owner is putting remotely the amount of money that Vincent Tanner's put into this football club. He's put a ridiculous sum of money into it. The problem is, a lot of that was avoidable.
Yeah,
a lot of that was avoidable because of the very structure that we've discussed earlier. So it's almost like self-inflicted wounds at times.
But do you know, it's funny, right? Because he does find, if we need transfer, we do find the money. You know, you found the money for Alex Robertson, found the money for Turnbull last January. But when it comes to the structure off the field, the manager, the coaches, whatever, those really vital positions that could be long-term, have a really positive effect on everything within the club, he doesn't seem to want to spend the money on those things. And that is strange to me. But ultimately, there's only one guy who makes those calls and those decisions. And I can't pretend to know what a millionaire or maybe even a billionaire, how their mind works, because I'm not one. So it's impossible for me to put myself in that position.
So there's no doubt the way forward for this football club is for Vincent Tan to re-energize his love and everything, to free up the funds, if you like, but to have the right structure in place at the football club, including the right manager. So he's the right man in terms of, you know, he's the right owner in terms of that, but he needs the structure there. And I think this is what Philip was getting at in that question, probably, that structure isn't right under him. And Philip clearly believes it will never be right under him. That's where the issue is. I'd like to see him re-engage, reinvest, re-infuse himself, and really give it a go for the Premier League. But you need that, you know, because there are a load of academy kids starting to come through now for the first time, really, in a long time. You know, the business model is far more sound than it was, but at the top end of the football structure within the club, it just is all wrong. We know that, but it has been for a decade now.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you, mate. Right, let's go to some comments then, just before we finish up. Martin makes quite an interesting point. He says, we've missed the Robinson-El Ghazi combination. Have they played together since the good run finished? I don't think they have they? Because Robinson had a knock and then El Ghazi had a knock. And I will say on El Ghazi, before you kind of respond to that, is I know people, and I agree, he hasn't hit the heights of what we were hoping, probably because he has played so little football last year. But I think his movement and the little pockets that he drifts into off that left-hand side create a lot of space for O'Dowda when he's at left back, for Robinson, and he's a very intelligent footballer. We just need to get him fit and firing. Unfortunately, because he's had this injury now, he's going to not be match fit again. But do you agree that perhaps that little combination between Robinson and El Ghazi coincides with that good run ending?
I don't know if that's the reason for it, to be honest
Well,
with you.
Just a contributing factor, I guess.
Yeah.
There was another interesting one. Oh, yeah. Jonathan says that Ruben and Ollie Tanner have been sussed out. Teams are not giving them the space they had early on. So you can see that the link-up is that link-up is the danger. But then my answer to that is always, as a footballer, if plan A isn't working, you have to come up with another way to find space, to create, one-on-ones, whatever it may be. But of course, like I did a Watford podcast last week, and they asked me, where are Cardiff dangerous, and where could Watford target Cardiff? So funny enough, I said right back for where they could get at us, and in terms of where we might cause them danger was that link up between Ruben, Tanner, and Robinson. But Cardiff have to find another way to create chances. I think you alluded to it earlier. That isn't just solely on Ruben Colwell. There has to be contributions from the other players. Like we haven't seen, Mate scored the other day. He had a bit of a dig at the fans. But if he performs like that week in, week out, I think no one would have a problem. I thought that was his best game in a Cardiff shirt. What did you make of that, by the way? Him having a bit of a dig at the City fans?
Silly, but yeah. I've given up on Kanga. Willock has been a terrible disappointment. He's exactly what Cardiff didn't need. Cardiff needed a fast winger. They've already got players with his sort of skill level in Ruben, Ramsey, and Turnbull. Needed a really fast, dynamic winger there. But El Ghazi, I still have hopes for. And Maita, I've never given up on Maita. I know a lot of Cardiff fans have, but I feel he's got, with his physique, with his power, with his pace, I think he's got a role to play off the bench. But what's he doing, cupping ears like that? It's just silly. Just enjoy the moment, Just enjoy the moment. Just enjoy the moment. The fans enjoyed it. You enjoy it with them. Don't try and sort of get one over them. Just anyway. It's best to move on from that one. In terms of the last, was it Jonathan? He makes a very valid point about Ruben, certainly in particular. I'm not sure on Tanner, but it's quite obvious. Blackburn, Ruben was the catalyst for Cardiff's turnaround in form and in fortunes rather, with his excellent form. And it's quite obvious that Blackburn ganged up on him, weren't giving him a minute's space. So this goes back to what I was saying before, Simon. You can't have a situation where, I said this 40 minutes ago, you can't have a situation where you stop Ruben, you stop Cardiff. You've got to have better players in the other forward areas that take the pressure off him in that respect.
Yeah, like Isaac Davis could be like a new signing for Cardiff when he comes back. I don't hold as much hope for Atete as some people do, but certainly they give options because Kanga has offered so little. Couple of comments here. Quinn says exactly what I just said, that Tete and Isaac Davis will feel like new signings in January. They could be game changers. I feel like Isaac could have a really big impact this year. If he can stay fit from sort of January to the end of the season, playing in this system with Ruben and Tanner and people around him, I think he can really replicate the scoring form that he had last year. But it all, of course, depends a lot on fitness and things like that. I do look forward to seeing Isaac Davis though under Omar Riza. I feel like the style of play and the way Isaac likes to get in behind could work quite well for Cardiff. Do you hold
Simon, I
hope?
wouldn't hold your hopes up too much. He's not back till what, late January, is it? He's
Yeah,
not going to be match fit until what, mid-March? This is a long way off still. The jury's out for me on Atete. I'm not as dismissive as you are about him. I'm not as raving about him as others are. But there's something about him, Si. He's a unit, which is what Kang is, obviously. Cardiff need a unit up there, I think. They need somebody to hold the ball up, to win the headers, to draw the fouls, to ease the pressure on the defence instead of it coming back all the time. And he has shown he's capable of scoring goals, Simon. He's quite quick for a big guy as well. I don't know. I just wonder, with the right midfield blend of Siopis, Robertson, and Ruben, if we actually might see a different Keona Tate. That'll be part of my hope for 2025. But that's notwithstanding the fact that they should go out and try and get a proven or a centre forward who we think will be more reliable in terms of scoring goals.
Yeah. Like for me, Keona Tate, he came through the Spurs academy. I thought he scored a couple of brilliant goals last year against Blackburn. So technically, he's clearly got ability. I just think he needs to toughen up a little bit physically, maybe mentally a little bit, stay on his feet a bit. But I have hopes, but it's probably hope more than belief. What do you think about this one? I got a feeling you're not going to agree with this, so I'm interested for your reaction. Holton said Aaron Ramsey needs to be paid off.
Well, again, I understand that. No, I don't. I can understand where it's coming from, but I still have hopes that he can come back, and he is somebody who would take the pressure off Ruben because he can step into that role and play really, really well. Or, this is one thing I will give Omar huge credit for. He remolded the midfield when he took over by playing Turnbull, Robertson, and Ruben, which was a far more progressive midfield. There is no reason why Ramsey can't play that 6 role as well. If Turnbull can do it, he certainly can. I'm not saying ahead of Siopis by any stretch of the imagination, but now and again. So no, I think Aaron's got the bit between his teeth. He knows that he's not playing anywhere near as much as he should have done for Cardiff. He's desperate to get back and justify the signing, the wages, if you like. I know he feels that bad injury he had playing for Arsenal against Stoke, he feels that this has had a knock-on effect on all these other injuries that he's had, and all becomes, trying to compensate for something, causing an issue in another area. So I would say about Aaron Ramsey that no, don't pay him off. Keep him in the hope that he returns. I think Aaron Ramsey could be Cardiff's manager a year and a half down the line. And I think that's a managerial appointment we could get, a young managerial appointment that we could all get excited about.
Yeah, I know you said that to me the other week or the other month. It's an interesting one. I think my worry is that if Aaron is put in the 10, whether that then restricts Ruben's progress, because I think Ruben's getting better by playing week in, week out in the number 10 position. And I wonder whether we end up trying to kind of accommodate the two of them and stuff. But he's got to get fit first. And look, just on that, with his injury at Arsenal, I've said for the last couple of years, if he doesn't break his leg against Stoke and like the way he did, he would have gone on and been one of the top 5 midfielders in Europe. He is that good at his peak. Now, he's clearly not at his peak now, but I still think he can offer a lot to Cardiff City once he's fit. And I agree with you. I'm not sure if I go along the lines of the Cardiff manager so soon, but I certainly think he can be a massive asset after his career as well. He's playing
year and a half is a long time, Simon, in football.
Yeah.
A long time. That's not soon, believe me. A lot will happen between now and a year and a half down the line.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, mate. Last couple, and then I'll wrap it up. Jonathan makes another really good one. I want to get your take on this. He says, why do you think Errol Bullock played pre-season with a positive-looking lineup, playing style, shape, but then as soon as the first league game came around, we reverted to the defensive side of last season, and it literally, with each game, it got more and more defensive and like the previous season. I was excited by our shape in pre-season. You know, we had the fullbacks pushed right up wide, the wingers were tucked in, and it was like 5 across the front. Gone. Why do you think he went back against that?
Pressure of real games rather than pressure of real matches rather than pre-season ones where it really doesn't matter if you win 5-0 or lose 7-0. We've discussed this before, and you were excited. I've raised before. I raised red flags with Errol. I was a backer of Errol's. I was one of the many who wanted to see him keep his job simply because the last thing Cardiff needed was more instability at that time. But it was always on the premise that he would be far more adventurous, which the hierarchy were assuring me he was telling them would be the case. But red flags were raised for me with the final, ahead of the final game against Bristol Rovers with his team selection. And I was just looking at that and I thought, this is dangerous. This is not going to end well. And it imploded far quicker than any of us could have anticipated, unfortunately.
Wrexham owners could be used as such an example to Vincent Tan. They regularly talk positively to and about the club, their fans. They advertise the club well, and Tan has done complete opposite. It does feel like Vincent Tan, since the rebrand was reversed, has taken a big step back in terms of publicly kind of that being associated with Cardiff, if you like. He seems much more like a silent owner now than he was pre-rebrand. Do you think that's fair?
I suppose so. I think he was reasonably vocal during the Russell Slade era and possibly to a lesser degree during the Neil Warnock era, but not to the degree he was when he first came in, no.
Thanks for reminding me of the Russell Slade era. It's just what I needed to bring my mood down. It's not, honestly, well, you know my feelings on that particular manager. It is what it is, I guess. I'm just going to pick a couple of questions out quickly just to finish us off. Evan says, I don't get why people say nobody will buy the club if Tan sells. Has Tan made Cardiff appear so dark and gloomy despite being the capital of Wales? Surely we're due new owners soon. So before you jump in on that, Paul, for me, the infrastructure at Cardiff as a city, the facilities and everything within the city, the capital of Wales, then you add in Cardiff Stadium, the Academy complex, everything which goes into the club and the city as a whole, everything is in place. And you could argue that we should already be an established sort of lower Premier League club if we were run properly. Is that fair, or is that my sort of love for the club clouding my judgment a little bit?
No, I think you can take a step back and look at it. There's a super stadium. There's a 99-year lease on or whatever it is. The academy is starting to thrive. They're building a new training ground. It's a capital city with all the positives that should be able to go with that. And Cardiff are different to most other clubs because it's a capital city. It represents Wales in many ways if it does well. When Swansea did were fantastic in the Premier League, but they could never reach out really beyond Swansea. I always feel with Cardiff that as the capital city, there's more. And number one, there's a much bigger fan base, obviously. But number two, there's a potential armchair fan base as well. As your capital city, if you're doing well in the Premier League against Man United and things, they can attract support from other areas of Wales as well, from North Wales, from Gwent, from Mid Wales. So it has, as a football club, it has a lot going for it. In terms of the actual question, when you buy a football club, there are three things, Simon, very quickly. There's the money that you pay up front for the football club. There's the debt you take on, and Tan himself took on about 8 million debt, as I remember rightly, in 2010, which he was directly responsible for and had to pay off. and there is how much money it will cost to get that football club into the Premier League, and for a club of Cardiff's potential size to keep them in the Premier League as well. So there's where these are the sort of great unknowns, if you like. How would you balance? I think has he put in something like 200 million of his own money or something like that? How much of that does he expect to get back? Cardiff seem to have a big debt, but it's not a bad debt because it's all internal. It's owed to the owner and the chairman by and large. It's not owed to a big bank. It's not, with massive interest rates to them. It's not owed to the tax man or whatever. It's an internal debt. So any potential sale then potentially gets negotiated against that, if you like. So he's right. Cardiff, it's not dark and gloomy. Cardiff is I was speaking to Peter Riza is a bit of a mover and shaker in football. He was telling me not so long ago, he's involved with Preston now, that there are a number of clubs involved, a number of championship clubs up for sale. And he was explaining why Cardiff are right up in the higher echelon of that in terms of attractiveness, which are a mix of the points that you and I have just made, Simon. So no, I don't think it is blue tinted spectacles at all. I think there's a lot of reason why somebody would want to get involved with a football club like Cardiff City, more than a Bournemouth or a Brentford or because Cardiff has got a sustainable fan base in that respect. The issue would be the cost, and those three. What would be the cost of each of those three elements that I've mentioned, which might make it prohibitive at the moment to people. That's where the problem lies, and with the Salah case hanging over the club as well.
Yeah, with that Salah case, which is so very complicated now because the non-owner has been charged or is being investigated for things like organised crime. Like that's going to go on for a very long time. It's very complicated and something which I can't even pretend to be particularly knowledgeable about. I am hoping to get someone who is knowledgeable about it, an expert on it. But do you think that if that ends up being settled and Cardiff do get a large sum of money in compensation or whatever you want to call it, that might be the sort of trigger point for Vincent Tan to then kind of take his money and sell up?
Well, it would be a mix of that. If so, it'd be a mix of that and the fact that by the time that is settled, he'll have been in situ for 16 years? That's a long time, Simon, for anybody to be involved in a football club. A long, long time. So that could be the trigger point that is part of the end game from what is actually a very, very long spell in charge. Anyway, but you could also counter that by saying that if Cardiff were to be sold, the Salah case could be compartmentalized in as much as Vincent continues to fight that case, and any money gain goes back to him, if you like, which would be understandable. But it's an extra complication. But I think it's more of it. It all adds into this element of how much it would cost for somebody to buy Cardiff City, and whether that would be prohibitive rather than the issues that we've mentioned, which are clearly not prohibitive because they are, the stadium, the training, and also these are real plus points. Real plus points.
Absolutely. Adam says, do you think we're good enough to stay up? And be honest, bias aside. I'll let you go first.
Well, yes, I've answered that already. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we are good enough. I still think if we were to get the right striker in, and I'm talking if we can get a striker in who will score between 12 and 15 goals from January to the end of the season, which I get is a big ask. If we were to get that player in, I still think that Cardiff could finish top 10 and be the team for once that makes that last run, that late run towards the playoffs. Not saying we'll get there, but just that late run, because I look at the side, and to me, I said the other day, Alex Robertson, we need to enjoy him while he's here, because I don't think he'll be with us for a 10-year spell, should we say. He's an exceptional footballer for someone so young. And I think the players are there. We just don't have a striker. I think you can get around the issues with right back. if you give the youngsters a go, or Rinamoto, which did a good job when he played there, just to give Perry NG a bit of competition. The wingers, I agree, we probably need one, or we need to get El Ghazi firing to the level that he's capable of. But when you kind of put it all together, I do think that we're more than good enough to go on a good run. This league is tighter than it's ever been, I think, this year.
Simon, it's not far off, is it?
You could, if you put five or six game win together, you'll be right up there.
Well, I don't mean that. I mean in terms of it's not far off to get that team firing.
No,
you're talking about three. You're talking about 2.5 positions, really, because right back isn't really an issue, is it? No. Yeah, you're talking about striker and wide player, aren't you?
An out-and-out goal scorer and a pacey winger. Yeah. And I think the squad will be flying.
That's not much.
That changes the whole dynamic of the squad, doesn't it, going forward?
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? Right, I'm going to pick one more question because I've kept Paul a bit longer than I said I was going to. Let me find one. Tell you what, Paul, I'm going to scroll through. You just say stop, and then I'll just pick that one.
Carry on. Go on, stop then.
Right.
Let them have their say. Pick a couple, 2 or 3 of them out.
Martin says Errol Bullett's squad lacked for legs for us to be a threat in the championship, and I think I'm right in saying Martin earlier said that we often don't look as strong and as athletic as our opponents. Why do you think that is? I have a theory, but I'm interested in what you think.
Are you talking past or present now?
Now, like just in terms of the squad lacking legs and physicality and athleticism.
It's a lot better than it was. I mean, Bullett's team was old. The average age was close on 30, wasn't it?
Oh, so I remember you saying about that midfield. You did not like that, did you?
Yeah, it was just, no wonder they lack legs when they've got a midfield. I think what was their combined age at the end of the season was going to be a shade short of 100 or something like that, and it all starts and ends with the midfield. And then, he picked older players further forward as well. It was just that's the reason they lacked legs and mobility. You can't, Robertson's got legs and mobility. I think Seops has got legs and mobility if he's given a chance. O'Dowda's bombing forward quite a lot when he's playing at left back. Tanner's got legs, so it's no, and if he gives Reindorf a go, he's certainly got legs and energy to burn. So if you're going to be picking some of the players that have been picked, that answers the question. But if you're going to be picking the players who perhaps should be picked, well, I don't think it's as unathletic as people suggest.
So my theory is that most other teams, if you look at their squads and their average starting 11s, their 18 to 21-year-olds, their top 18 to 21-year-olds from their academies are playing first-team football. So you automatically have, so you referred to Reindorf just then, just his energy and his athleticism was clear as soon as he came on and against Coventry. I'm not saying he needs to finish the article by any means, but just his energy alone was obvious to see, and it rubbed off on others. So I look at Sunderland, they've got a couple of academy players in there. You look at the profile of their players, they're quite young, and I think that goes for a lot of those teams up at the top. They play young players. They're all young, physical, athletic people who can get around the pitch for 90 minutes, and they're all excellent, technically excellent on the ball as well. So yeah, I don't know whether people will agree or disagree with that, but that's just my theory, really.
We'll go back to the win over Southampton last year, which was the best win of the season, and look at what Kapaku and Giles did compared to the regular fullback. They played that day through force of circumstance. Look what they did in the last half hour of that game.
Yeah. So a few people have mentioned that they don't think Siopis is the answer for that third midfield slot.
Fair enough.
I think someone said we could do with a 22-year-old Joe Ralls, which was quite an interesting one, which I don't disagree with. What do you think about recalling Joel Colwell from his loan? because he's doing very well, but it's in League Two. But he's played men's football. He's scoring goals, getting assists, playing week in, week out. Is there a conversation to be had there where he could be the sort of the number 6 or another number 8?
I haven't.
Or is he better suited to stay in there till the summer?
Yeah, the truth is, I haven't seen enough of him to make a valid judgment on that, Simon. I mean, when I did see him last season, I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest with you, given the hype that I was given behind the scenes about him. But he clearly has got talent. Obviously, if you're young, that talent will come through as you get more game time and everything. So he's clearly part of the future for Cardiff City. But I think with there's only so many players that can play at the moment.
Yes.
So with the number of midfield players Cardiff have got, I think his progress is likely to be stagnated, and he's probably better off seeing the season out where he is. Although certainly I wouldn't be against him coming back at all for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if they want him to come back for a specific starting role, say, then and there's a plan, then I would say, yeah, of course, bring him back. But if he's just coming back to be a squad player, then I'd say, no, leave him where he is, where he's playing week in, week out. He'll get more out of that, and he's more likely to be ready for the summer and next year if he's played a whole season week in, week out. Ryan Wintle, would you bring him back in January?
No.
That you just answered that exactly the same way, the same word, and the same lack of expansion is exactly what I'd have answered if you'd have asked me the same question. And we move on.
As Cardiff have to move on. As Cardiff,
yes.
Cardiff have got to move that midfield on. They've started to do so now.
Yeah. No, the interesting thing, we've had I've been speaking to a couple of Cheltenham fans on Joel Corwell, and I think Cleo has just said there, he's been playing as a 10, he's played as a 6, he's played as an 8, and he's played as a right midfielder. They've played him all over the place. But the one
it's great for his development.
Oh, 100%. And one thing they've all said, those Cheltenham fans, I think there's 3 or 4 of them I've been chatting to, and they all say the same thing. No matter what, when he plays, they are better. And I think that to hear that about your young player on loan that's what you want to hear, isn't it? He's been scoring, he's been assisting, he's bulked up a little bit. The photo I saw of him the other week, he definitely looks like he's bulked up a little bit. Whether that's natural growth for his age, because he's still young. Well, he was young last year or the last couple of years when we've seen him, so he's going to naturally fill out a bit. But
Simon, people like him. So Joel, his brother, obviously, Robertson, Darland, Capaccio, Giles. These are the future of the football club. And we're not talking about too far in the future now. This is the future of the football club. So their progress must, there are a number of other youngsters I can mention as well, but these are the sort of the standout ones for me. So their progress, one way or the other, must not be inhibited. Because if it is, what's the point of the academy?
100%. But you could, if you think of it, you could have Giles left back, you could have Darland, you could have Lawler, who's exceptional at the moment. You've got Fish, Pacquiao, then you've got Joel Colwell, Ruben Colwell, Alex Robertson. There's another one, I've forgotten his name, I apologise, Raheem Conte. Then you've got Isaac Davis, you've got Ollie Tanner. All of them are under 22. All of them. And that's a full, just off the top of my head, that's a full 11. So you think, I've missed some out. Kean Ashford, I haven't mentioned there. I think we should send Kean out on loan, to be honest with you, because it doesn't look like he's going to get a chance to be a starting player in the wide areas for us. I actually think we could use his pace at times down in the wide areas, but it doesn't look like he fancies him. So for me,
this is my point, that it's far more fit for purpose now moving forward than it has been in recent years. And with the right manager to knit all this together over the next 2, 3, 4 years, I think the future can be quite exciting. But these youngsters just can't be let to go through the wayside.
Got to play. This has been they got to play. Like, I look at the fullbacks, and I think when I look at the quality of our centre backs as well, I'm surprised that we haven't gone with 3 centre backs with 2 young wing backs. I'm just surprised we haven't done that, because I think that way you can give those young players game time, freedom to not be out and out fullbacks. But it is what it is. A few people mentioning Conte. I get so angry when I like he's not playing a great deal for Woking, but we should have kept. I don't understand why we sent him on loan. I thought he was very, very impressive at the end of last year. I thought he was very impressive in the summer, in the pre-season, and he can play a range of positions. So it made no sense for him to go on loan. But there's people missing out on the squad already. So would he have just been sat maybe in the 23s? Who knows? It's difficult, isn't it? We need to move some players on. I think the squad is massive. When you think the likes of Jamalu Collins haven't been in the squad as much recently. I know he played the other day. Kean Ashford has not been in the squad. Kanga has not been in the squad. Surely we'll terminate his loan, Paul, in January, won't we? If he's not even making the squad.
I don't know. I don't know what the technicalities of that are with that particular deal.
Have you got any players in mind that you would like to see the club try and get in the summer?
Not really. I mean, I'm aware of the young strikers who are tearing up in League One, but again, tearing up in League One and the Championship are 2 different things. No, I want to be pleasantly surprised. I don't think Cardiff need many. This is the point I'm making, Simon, again. I think you're in agreement with me. I don't think there are many needed. I think what is needed is quality in those 2 forward positions and a good right back who either displaces Perry NG or forces Perry NG to return to his very best form again. Either way, that's win-win for Cardiff. We need to be reliant upon the club to get the right individuals here. They have a vast network, right? They just need to get the right individuals for the team as it says. No good getting another winger that we can get excited about and discover he's not a real whippet. Cardiff clearly need a winger with genuine pace on the wing. In terms of the goal scorer, it'd be great to get somebody who scores goals. But you know what, Simon? It's not just about goal scoring. I can forgive the lack of goals. I want to see a centre forward who, as I've said, holds the ball up, wins the headers, links the play, draws the fouls which takes pressure off the defence. And if there are goals on top of that, it's a wonderful bonus as well. Gets into the box to try to get on the end of crosses, that sort of thing, yeah? Cardiff put a lot of good crosses across in recent games. There's nobody getting remotely on the end of them. So I just want that sort of individual to be brought in. And we have, I just hope that Omar and his scouts and the recruitment team have identified that sort of individual, because it's crying out for me. Where that leaves Callum Robinson, I'm not so sure. I've always been a big, big advocate of Callum Robinson. When others were giving up on him last year, I said, no, he's still got a big role to play for the club. But Callum's almost like an old-fashioned second striker. And modern football doesn't really have those individuals. So he's not really the right person to play a lone role up front in terms of holding the ball up, drawing the fouls that I've just mentioned. And there are better players than him for the 10 role. So, we don't really want him going into the wide role because you need somebody. But he's also too good a player not to play. So they're almost falling between the stools on that one. But I think Cardiff need a big man up front. I don't want to sound, Luddite like in my football thinking and saying that, but I just think it suits Cardiff to have a big guy who has got the physical attributes to do the very aspects that I've just mentioned. And then if he can score the odd header or do something like that, great, even better.
Clue says, is there any chance we could bring Simic back? Obviously signed in the summer, sent on loan. And he's not getting a look in because Corvick have got like 7 strikers. So do you think there's any chance we might bring him back to bolster the
obviously a
central
chance.
forwards.
There's obviously a chance, but again, the jury's out. I haven't seen enough on him to judge him. He's another very young player. So I don't know. I'd like to see young Reindorf given a go at the moment, Simon. I really would.
Yeah, in the short term. Yeah, I agree with that. I do as well. I think he's raw, and I think anyone who's expecting him to just come in and be the finished article is probably kidding themselves. But I just think the energy that he brings rubs off on other people, and I think that's really important. I just wanted to say two outlandish names to you, potential short-term loans, and people. This is going to wind people up because I banged on about one of them all summer. Jordan James moved out to France in the summer, has only played 5 games this season. Would he be a good loan signing if Cardiff could pull it off? Him and Robertson be a good duo, would they not?
Yeah, but I doubt Cardiff have got the wherewithal to even
think about it.
Know where Jordan James is playing, to be honest with you. I may be doing them a disservice there, but
I think he'd be an excellent addition. Whilst I understand that he's not, he may not, that position might not be the be all and end all. If you were going to move Psyop is out in January, Jordan James would be a hell of a replacement. And the other one, although he did play on Saturday, so this kind of takes away from that. Nico Williams has not played a lot of football this year. Can play left or right. Short-term loan. Would you be happy with that?
Cracky. Yeah. Nico's played a lot of football this year, Simon. I think you're doing him a disservice there.
A lot, haven't he? I know. That was tongue-in-cheek, in fairness. But
I think, he and he's been one of the very few Wales players who've actually have got a decent amount of Premier League minutes behind them this season. So Nico's far too good for the Championship, Simon. I'll predict here and now, just to very quickly put a Wales head on, that in time, Nico Williams, when he plays in his right position on the right rather than Connor Roberts, and Owen Beck, who's coming through from Liverpool on the left, they will be the best pair of fullbacks that Wales have ever had. That's how highly I rate Nico Williams. I think he's a super player. He's too good for the Championship. He's far too good to drop down to the Championship, Simon. And he's getting enough games in the Forest anyway.
Well, put it this way, this is how highly we rate Nico Williams. I recorded our Cymru Am Bydd podcast, which I do with Harry. We had a special guest on for our Christmas episode, which will be out over Christmas. They'll peek into that. For that, we did our Wales all-time 11, and that right-back position, Nico Williams was very much in the conversation to be Wales' all-time right-back. I won't tell you whether he made the cut, but he was in the kind of final couple that made it. So, yeah, I think he's excellent. On Simic, very quickly, was playing Champions League football last year for a side that created quite a lot of chances. We do create. Since Rhys has taken over, Cardiff do create chances. We've missed a lot of chances this year. And I just wonder if we just get a striker who's, capable and has the skill set, we do create chances. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because on paper, Kanga in the summer comes in and you look at it on paper and you think, oh, he'll probably do all right in the Championship. But actually, he didn't and hasn't, and he hasn't looked interested, in my opinion. But that's another story. If we only sign a striker, Paul, who gets us a couple of goals and a pacey winger, I think those two signings in January change the whole dynamic of the side, because I believe we do create chances. We have clever players in midfield who can utilize pace and goal scoring abilities up front in front of them. And I think defensively we're quite deep, really, other than right back. So I don't think you need 7-8 players and a whole change to it. You just need the right players of the right quality, I guess. And I mean, Jonathan made a point there. He just said Sunderland wanted Simic to play as their first choice striker. and we beat him to him. So does that tell you something? I guess it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, you could end up with Simic, Reindorf, and Isaac Davis with Callum Robertson as your 4 strikers, which is remarkable because they're all on Cardiff's books already. So what are we waiting for, Paul? As we said just now, you've got to play these young players, mate.
Yeah, and when I say play, people say, you can't play 11 young players. I'm not talking about playing 11 young players at all. Gutas will be in every single Cardiff team I pick. One of Chambers or Darland will be in every Cardiff team I pick. I see a role for Siopas's experience. I see a role, I see a role for O'Dowda's experience in certain positions. I'm not sure he's the answer on the left wing, but but don't just put all the youngsters on the back burner. Why?
Yeah.
The other week, Jamilu Collins came into the team. Why? I can't see Jamilu Collins being at the club next season. If you're going to do it, give Louis Giles or Bagan a go, who are part of the future of the football club.
Agreed, mate. Agreed. And to me, I've been banging that drum all summer, all season. But to me, for too long, we've held youngsters back, and I don't mean that in we're stopping them playing or whatever, or we're ruining their careers. But what we're doing is we don't give them the opportunity. Think how long it's taken to give Reindorf a chance off the bench. And I just wish sometimes we'd go, no, do you know what? Let's just give them a chance. Let's give them 20 minutes here and there. Let's give them a start. Let's give them an hour, see how they get on. Let's we look every time, it is another way to look at it, Paul. In the last 18 months, when Reindorf, Louis Giles, K. Pacquiao, Conte, Joel Colwell, someone else, Bagan, when they've played for Cardiff City's first team, have any of them let Cardiff down in terms of? I don't mean they've let us down as a critic. I just mean have any of them really been particularly poor? I don't think so. I think they've all been pretty good, in fact. So, yeah, it's puzzling. Maybe we'll see a difference now with Omar Risa having a bit more job security. Who knows? Right, we're going to wrap it up there. It's a super long one tonight. Paul, thank you so much for your time, your patience, and your honesty, mate, as well. I appreciate it. We put you on the spot a little bit. We tried to keep the conversation flowing whilst also having a little look at the comments and stuff. Appreciate everyone. Nearly 300 odd people watching, so that's always good. Cardiff City phone in tomorrow. Make sure you check that out. Also have a preview for the Preston game, and then the Flower Hour will be out on Tuesday night as well. And we've also got coming up the City Legend events with Willie Boland, City Legend event with Joe Ledley. The video versions of those will be out in the coming weeks as well. So please keep an eye out for them. Got loads of good stuff coming in the run up to Christmas, including our Christmas countdown, which features a range of content linked to numbers, which is interesting. You might see a few familiar faces on there, as well as everyone off the channel and stuff like that. So, it's been good. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you, mate.
All the best, everyone.
Indeed. See you all soon. In a bit.